are you going to bring up my slideshow on the screen or no?
Actually, you'll share your screen so that you can move through your slides.
Okay, I've never done that, and I'm on my phone, but let me call back in from my laptop.
Okay, that's all right. No problem.
I would be willing to go first if needed, just so you know. If Jordyn needs time to get set up.
Thanks, Billie. We'll let Jordyn rejoin, and then I'll ask her that.
Okay. In the meantime, Yanchum, we can't see you, and I see you're muted too. Are we going to, do you have a webcam?
I have it, but like I'm allergic to something in my apartment today, so I don't want to turn on my camera. Is that okay?
Okay, understood. All right. Sorry to hear that. Okay, we can see you, Jordyn.
There you go. So Jordyn offered to go first. If you'd like them to, they can, or if you're all set, you can go.
Okay, yeah, I can go now.
Okay.
Sorry, I just, you know.
That's okay.
We can see it.
Okay, good. All right, slideshow. Okay, so my topic is going to be an overview of echocardiography, and I'm going to go through some of the tools that we use in echo to treat subclinical diseases like amyloidosis, and I'll go more into it, but here's our first slide. So echo, all it is cardiac ultrasound. We typically use it to rule out diseases or as like a screening tool. We can tell if valves are too tight or too leaky. We can tell congenital heart defects, like, you know, if your aortic valve is missing a leaflet, if there's fluid around your heart, if there's fluid in your lungs, chamber thickness and dilation, anything like that. So we check the structural function of your heart. We can't see your coronary arteries directly, but we can do other tests with echocardiography to rule out coronary artery disease. But it gives us a lot of information. So I figured I'd include some of the standard views that we obtain during a thoracic exam. So I just pointed out some structures. So we use a lot of different techniques with echo. One is called spectral Doppler. We have color Doppler, which is technically a form of pulse wave, continuous wave Doppler, TEI, strain, both STNGLE, M mode, and I'll go into what they are in the next couple of slides. So in the image over to your right is what spectral Doppler looks like. So pretty much there's a cursor and you cut through a plane that you're in of the heart and you can get velocity and direction. It's one of the ways we can tell if a valve is stenotic or regurgitant, but just the spectral Doppler alone is the waveform that you see on the image. And it's obviously represented by pulse wave or continuous wave Doppler. This one image is technically pulse wave because there's a little bit of black in the middle. And then we have color Doppler, which also shows the direction, but we tend to use that to lead us towards, sorry, I just want my dog out of there. So yeah, the color Doppler gives us direction as well. It's not like deoxygenated blood or oxygenated blood. So like if you see on the right, through that valve, there's this blue flow that is mitral regurgitation. And if you were to see that on the spectral Doppler, it would go below the baseline. So it's really important to have certain things lined up because all of these are dependent on being parallel to flow. All right, so now I have pulse wave, and I just talked about it a little bit, but it's denoted by the white envelope. And all of these are going to carry characteristics which are really important in treating patients for certain diseases. If there's on the right-hand side with the first picture, with the pulse wave, the cuticle in the middle, if that box is slightly smaller in the middle with just white instead of black, that's something that can be indicative of stenosis, or it could be more severe based on certain qualities. So pretty much you're going to sample whatever area that you're suggested of pathology being seen. And then, yeah, like I said, you want to be parallel so you can get the most accurate reading. And this is continuous wave. So typically pulse wave, you can't read high velocities. So stenosis typically is, I don't know, depending on the valve, if it's like mitral regurgitation, it can get to 6 meters per second, but you know, there's a cutoff. So continuous wave technically is independent of having that limit. So we use that quite often in every exam. In TDI, so TDI typically looks at how the heart relaxes. So you use pulse wave, you put your gate in a certain area, and then you enhance that. With it, we can tell if a patient has restricted cardiomyopathy, diastolic dysfunction, based on the pattern. And I gave some diagrams on the side of like what normal and moderate and severe would look like and how we grade it. And strain. So strain is fairly new. Not all labs are using it, but it just evaluates the function of the heart muscle. I know it's been used a lot with COVID patients recently. They put it on the right ventricle, the right side of the heart, as we know, kind of gives us information about the lungs. So it's helped a lot in treating COVID patients and seeing what the possible outcomes would be. But it detects a lot of subtle changes as well with other subclinical diseases. It tracks, you know, the heart muscle velocities. So if one area is down, it'll change a different color. And these are the 3 ways that it measures those deformation changes of the heart muscle. It's radial strain, circumferential strain, and longitudinal strain. And this is kind of a representation of what you would see. -20 in that range is pretty normal, and the red color is normal. And the diagrams below that, when all those velocities track about the same, you know, it's the normal heart squeezing. So yeah, I just gave a representation of that, of the bullseye that you would see. They're related to each other. So yeah, these utilizations, which I've talked about in my paper, we can tell by certain patterns of all of these combined, like amyloid on here will show in the middle just the red dot. They call it like a cherry, because all the other heart muscle isn't squeezing correctly, but the apical portion of the heart, so the apex, is normal though. And honestly, amyloid is really underdiagnosed as well as other diseases. So I gave a definition of what subclinical diseases are. Maybe some people don't know, but it's an infection with no obvious observable or detectable symptoms. And when you look into the research, I do my clinical rotations, and I happen to stumble upon like a patient with amyloid through using strain, and I just didn't even realize that strain had pointed out that he had amyloid. So I wanted to do more research into it, and I couldn't believe that 75% of cardiac amyloid patients saw over 3 physicians before their diagnosis was made, and only 18% of the patients had the correct diagnosis made. And yeah, I also found out that cardiologists are the most subspecialties to make a misdiagnosis. And it's good to know these things going into this field, just because with things like hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, certain things like TDI, if you're paying close enough attention, you can kind of like rule out between each one to make the right diagnosis to help the doctor. So yeah, I just gave some other subclinical diseases and what a strain pattern might look like. So we have normal, the cardiac amyloid, where I said the normal parts in the middle that represent the apical septum, apical holcomb. So everything else is normal but the apical region, so it's denoted by different colors. And then a septal MI. So an MI is a heart attack. It's called a myocardial infarction, and that part of the septum is akinetic, because it didn't get enough oxygen, so it dies essentially. So yeah, I just put in some of the things that as an echocardiographer you would look for: RV thickening, low stroke volume, and obviously like I said, a lot of labs don't do strain, but strain is definitely necessary. And that's all I have, unless anyone has questions.
So I have a couple of questions, Jordyn. So tell me how much of this project you were familiar with before you did the project, and what all you know now that you didn't know before.
So I didn't use strain really until, I don't know, I still haven't used it a ton. So I had to do a lot of research, and I've asked the cardiologists that I've been with for a lot of studies based on it. because it's just so unknown. And I was like, I could see it being used in the future more. So I was like, oh, it'd be something cool to look into. And I've never really seen amyloid other than the one time. So I was like, I should look into it. Um, so
So
I
you,
feel like,
so this is a project that you're on clinical rotation now, is that right?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so you've done this project hand in hand with your rotation, right?
yes,
Okay. All right.
yeah.
And have you done it on your own, or have you worked closely with whoever's supervising you, or what's the story there?
No, I haven't. Like I said, I was just kind of intrigued by that. Like I didn't even notice, and the person I was with didn't notice that the patient had this diagnosis necessarily because it was so subtle. And honestly, like I'm in a rural hospital, and a lot of people in the area don't know how to use it. So I just asked people for more articles, more information, and I just went more in depth with it.
Okay, so the one thing that jumps out at me, and
Mhm.
maybe you can comment on, is
Sure.
the fact that from what you said, subclinical diseases of the heart are so poorly diagnosed. And yet what you seem to be saying is that there are now the echocardiograms could make the situation a lot better. So
Yeah.
why is there a lag there? I mean, is the technology just becoming available? And the
So
data you mentioned are historical and not up to date with current practice?
no, so a lot of sonographers I feel like don't like change. They don't I don't know. Some of them don't stay up to date on newer technology, or maybe the technology isn't available to them. Um so a lot of times, like I said, like they don't know, or they haven't used the technology to its fullest ability to make more advanced studies, I guess I would say. You know, and like I said, it probably depends per hospital, but it's still pretty unknown. I mean, some cardiologists don't even want to read strain technically, like if they don't feel comfortable with it.
Right, but the data that you showed wasn't diagnoses by sonographers, as I understood it. It was diagnoses by physicians, cardiologists. So what? I mean, are you
Yeah.
saying that there's a bunch of cardiologists out there that they could improve their diagnostic ability if they used these technologies, but they just don't want to use them? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I think some may be like that, but technically, I mean, we're the eyes of the cardiologist. Um, if we don't do certain technology, I mean, they make the diagnosis typically on what we're showing them and what we're
I see.
reading them in.
I see.
So if we don't use that technology and they don't question it, or they don't know, I mean, like I mean, yes, there's other testing, but maybe necessarily they want to go down that route.
So what would happen if you took this presentation to one of your sonography professors at in CHST? What would they say?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I did bring it up to my main professor, Beth Ray, and she thought it was interesting that, because it's something you don't really think about, but when you look at the data, like it has been underdiagnosed at the end of the day. And I have honestly, when I told some of my colleagues that I was writing this, they asked me for more information on strain because they're like, I don't know that much on it. Like I'd like to learn more. So I feel like I got a lot of the project as someone that's going into the field in 2 weeks, and I want to give better patient care, be more aware.
So you're actually graduating in 2 weeks?
I am.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So great presentation. Thank you, Jordyn. So Meg, would you like to take your turn?
Yeah, thanks. So I thought that was really interesting, Jordyn, and really kind of a comprehensive overview of your field. I'm interested in your comments about the fact that you're in a rural hospital. Is that where you're doing your clinicals right now? And how would you say that impacts maybe the diagnosis of something like strain or, you know, your ability to deliver high quality care?
I mean, I love my clinical sites and everything. It's not like I'm not saying that they're not like good at what they do whatsoever,
Oh,
but
no.
at the end of the day, um, when you go from a bigger hospital to a more rural hospital, I think the patient care is a little bit different because you're not exposed to certain things like a left ventricle assisted device. I don't know how to work that up. Most people in the area don't, but if you go to Rochester, they do. Like congenital heart disease, like some things we don't see, and but if you go to Rochester, you do. Like, so I think that sometimes some things might be so subtle that if you don't see it often enough, you might not notice. You know,
Are you hoping to get exposed to a city like Rochester or maybe even Boston or Chicago or some areas that would give you really that breadth of experience?
yeah, some of the places I applied to were bigger cities. I applied to Rochester, Syracuse, so I'm hoping to, you know, get my eyes exposed to more things so that I can be better, you know.
Fantastic. Well, best of luck to you. I enjoyed that.
I feel like I could have did it better, but it's so hard to like unfold all of it. So I figured I'd give an overview and try to incorporate it. But thank you.
Nice job.
All right. So
Thanks, Jordyn.
thank you.
So Billie, are you up?
Yes, I will just share my video right now. All right. Can you see this?
Yep.
All right, I'm just gonna do a quick audio test, so just let me know if you hear me start talking or if you can't hear me. Hello, my name is Billie. You can hear it okay?
Yep, got it.
All right, just wanted to make sure. I'm gonna mute myself just so there's some background noise. I just want to make sure you can hear the video okay. Hello, my name is Billie. For my Capstone project, I create a series of electronic music compositions. My main goal when composing this music was to create songs that fit my mood. Much of the music I would usually listen to was close, but still didn't quite match how I was feeling. There were moments where I'd feel frustrated or lost because I couldn't find the right music for that moment. And that's been my primary motivation when exploring music so far. Create music that I want to listen to, that fits the moment that I'm in and moves me towards what I want to feel. The process mainly consisted of brainstorming and experimenting with musical ideas, and then developing and refining them into the rhythms and melodies that make up a song. The process is still new to me, and I faced many challenges, which led to multiple lessons learned along the way. One of the main challenges I faced was determining where to start. In researching other artists' production techniques, one of the main pieces of advice I heard was just start playing, which it took me a while to take that to heart and to understand just how much trial and error and patience the process entails. It took me a while to take it literally as just start pushing buttons, see what happens, and play. That's been the hardest part for me. After I had some musical ideas to work with, I began editing and expanding these ideas using Ableton Live, which is one of the most common software packages for professional electronic music production. I chose to purchase this software over freely available alternative software because I wanted to focus on the music instead of the configuration. Once I captured some compositions using Ableton and developed them into a full-length song, I began the process of mixing and revising these songs. This is where I really wanted to work with someone in real time and say like, hey, does this sound right? Does this sound weird to you too? Or does this sound too loud? And it's really hard to do that right now in the pandemic, in the situation that we're in right now. I really look forward to being able to collaborate with other musicians in the future. That will be a huge help for me when that is possible again. This is the part where I start showing some of my music. This is the first track that I'm about to show. It's only a snippet of one of the first tracks I developed. I'm quite happy with it. Yet I have another one later on that I wanted to show in full, which is why this is just a snippet. This next track is about 2.5 minutes in length. I wanted to show it in full because I really like how it develops over time and how it works together as a whole. It's a slow-paced track, but I find it really calming, and that is exactly what I was looking for in my music, so I'm very happy with it. This next track is one that I'm still working on, but I'm quite proud of just how this demo has come along, especially with the drum beat. So I wanted to include it in here just to show that I'm still working on stuff and I'm still learning, but I'm very happy with the results that I've had from just the few months that I've been working with this. There are a variety of directions I could expand these ideas into. One that I'm particularly interested in right now is syncing my music to procedurally generated visualizations. So graphics and animations that change in real time with the music. Currently, I have some software that allows me to do animations in real time, but I still need to figure out how to sync that up with the frequencies or notes and the rhythms and beats of my music. That's still a work in progress, but I do have some progress made, and I'm really looking forward to expanding that. In addition to procedurally generated graphics, I'm also interested in procedurally generated music. I believe that there's potential to apply set theory and 12-tone music theory techniques to algorithmically generate original compositions. This could allow for automated, personalized compositions in the moment, or infinitely long compositions for streaming radio stations. In terms of career development, I also plan to release the music I have made and any future compositions on self-publishing platforms such as Bandcamp, and maybe even expand further into streaming platforms using DistroKid, which can publish to YouTube Music, Spotify, whatever else is out there. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this experience takes me. I've very much enjoyed creating my own music and experimenting with new areas that I wouldn't have otherwise explored if it wasn't for individualized studies. And I'm greatly looking forward to seeing where I go from here. All right, I'm willing to answer any questions at this point.
Nick, would you like to go first?
Sure. So Billie, can you share with us a little bit of your exposure to platforms like the one that you demonstrated your 3 different pieces in? And you also give us a little perspective on what you want to do next?
So you mean by platform, you mean the software that I use to make the music?
Right.
Okay. The software that I was displaying them in was the same software I composed them in. It's Ableton. It's called Ableton Live, and that was a software that I purchased recently just to because I got to try it out in 2 of my previous classes, composing for video games and electronic music production, which really got me interested in using it on my own professionally in the future. It's essentially, you have a clip, a MIDI clip that you can draw notes into, or play them using an external piano. And then you arrange them into different tracks, assign instruments to those tracks. Some of which I designed the sound myself, some of which were presets. And that, when layered on top of each other, forms a more complete song. One thing that I want to work towards in the future is some longer pieces. Like I was talking about generating pieces that were infinitely long. That is something that I really would like to do in the future. That's something that really interests me.
And what do you do what do you want to do when you graduate? Which is that happening in the next few weeks?
Yes, I will be graduating in a few weeks. I do have a full-time job lined up, more in line with computer engineering, but I plan to keep working at music and see where I can take that as either a side job or maybe potentially one day a full career.
Fantastic. So really, prior to this project, you really hadn't designed, layered and put together music on your own.
On my own, no. I've music has actually been a recent fascination of mine. It's been about 1.5 to 2 years that I've really been working with this, and I've come to it from an engineering background, which has admittedly been difficult. There are 2 very different fields, to say the least. But it's been a very fun time.
I really enjoyed your presentation and your music.
Thank you.
So thanks for sharing with us.
Billie, would you define for me procedurally generated music? I don't know what that means.
So by procedurally generated, I mean maybe a human set some parameters or a couple of rules, but from there it's generated automatically using software or some other mechanism. So in terms of like a player piano or a music box, it's like you build a contraption that punches holes in the tape, but you don't have any direct control over what music it plays. Does that make sense?
Well, it might make sense to some people, but I didn't follow it. So
okay,
it's automatically generated. So where
yes.
are you in this process?
Mainly in setting the rules and writing the software itself that would generate the music. That's one of the things that I'm interested in the future, is finding ways to generate music automatically. I
see.
Yeah.
To generate music automatically. That's a concept that it doesn't full comprehension is eluding me.
Yeah, there's been some examples in the past, but yeah, it's going to be quite the journey to get there. But I do think there are ways, kind of a compromise between fully machine generated and handmade by a person. I think there's a compromise between those 2 points that could produce something interesting.
Okay, well, I'm glad there's still a human element. But anyway, so it sounds like this project, you used this project, or you worked on this project to push forward an interest that you already had and you sort of been playing around with. You mentioned a couple of courses that you'd already taken.
Yes.
So this presumably enlarged your knowledge, developed it further in different directions, and gave you more of a sense of where you want to take it in the future. So it sort of focused things or specified things a little bit. So
yes.
But given what you just said to Meg, you've only been interested in music for a short while. Can you tell us how that happened? I mean, what made you switch? I mean, how did it originate?
So music has always kind of been in the background of my life. Like, I can hardly do homework without music in my ears. Like, some of my assignments have been done with some of the loudest, most fastest music I can find. But I wanted to find something that calms me down after moments like that, or when I'm like just trying to fall asleep. And that's kind of the music that I started to generate here. So it was moments like that where I wanted to calm down, and I'm like, I don't know what to listen to right now. I've always been kind of curious about making music, but never really took the opportunity to. And I was starting to realize my computer engineering courses weren't quite fitting into what I wanted. So that's when I looked into individualized studies, and I decided to take the opportunity and make the leap over to music, which was quite the leap, but I'm very happy with now being able to create music and still do computer engineering, and having two diverse skill sets and being able to find the overlap in them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds pretty. So you're starting from the point of you want to calm down, right?
Yeah.
So, but after that, it's very open ended. I mean,
yeah.
you know what sort of music you like. You know that you haven't found exactly the music that is going to fulfill the function of calming you down.
Uh-huh.
So you base your creation or your composition. That's the starting point, is the sort of thing that you like, but it isn't exactly what you want. And then you build from there. Is that what happens?
Yes. It's very much composing for a purpose. That's kind of what I think I was missing in some of my earlier attempts at making music, when I was just kind of poking around at a piano or not really taking it seriously yet. I needed to find that purpose, that problem to solve with music.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I ended up finding through, I mean, largely through composing for video games, realizing that composing for a purpose is that's why I realized I needed a purpose to compose for. And then through this process, I figured out, okay, composing for calm moments or for particular feelings and moments I want to have is what I really narrowed down with this class.
So, you often hear people say that the brain of a mathematician is not that far different from the brain of a musician.
Mm-hmm.
But by the same token, you rarely hear that the brain of an engineer aligns with the brain of a musician. So that's an interesting overlap that you're trying to achieve here.
It's funny that you'd mention that, because actually I have a little bit of my music theory project with me, and it looks like just notes like a composition, but down here actually is my own mapping of, like, I want to find 4 patterns that cover all 12 tones.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And at that point, it's not a musical problem, it's a math problem.
Uh-huh.
Of how do you find a pattern that you can repeat 3 or 4 times and still cover all 12 notes.
Uh-huh.
So I've found a few places where it overlaps, and it's been quite the fun time to explore and play with those areas.
Fascinating. All right. Well, I very much enjoyed your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
It worked well. You're the first person that I've seen that did it ahead of time, but it worked well. So good for you. Good.
It's very good to hear. I was admittedly pretty nervous, but I'm glad it was well received.
You blazed a new trail there. All right.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. And now we'll turn to Yanchum.
I'm so nervous.
Let's
see, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So my name is Yanchum, and my project is about non-text storytelling. Wait, what's going on? So overall, it is really hard to find a definition of this project, because it is not like I want to study into a specific field, or I want to do like some programming things like the previous presentation. Like, it is really difficult, but what I want to do in this project is I want to merging a lot of storytelling techniques together. Like when you're watching a film, there is like filming technologies that you would understand the story, and when you read a novel, you're gonna follow the novel, and that's one technique that you want to tell a story. And another one I used a lot is the comics. So like they are like pretty fixed images, but you still gonna know like what is going on. So it's kind of like an experimental thing in my project. So these 3 are mainly what I got inspired from. So I'm just gonna go with manga and comics first. So they're fixed images, and I have an example here. There are separated images, but you can still get to know like what is going on in the image, even though like you don't really know like who the guys in the images are. So like this guy, look at this guy, and you go to this thing, and you go to here, you're gonna like follow the logic that the gun is the main focus of like this image. So as I said here, like there is a certain logic in like basically like all the comics you're gonna read in the world. So the next one is film. So in film, sometimes there are like things that people don't have dialogues, they just like do their movements, and you know like what is going on. And one of the very representative ones are what called montage. So basically montages put a lot of like random stuff together, and you are gonna find a logic between those stuff, and you're gonna know like maybe that's a metaphor of the characters movement, or maybe like that's what is going on. So one of the montage I didn't put here is the one from the film Psycho. So there is a famous thing that a killer is killing a woman in when the woman is doing bath. So there is no direct like killing stuff like happening in the film, and there are just like random stuff like a knife or the woman screaming, and by like linking everything together, you are gonna know like, okay, the killer is killing the woman. So the last inspiration is visual novels. It is like a little different from the previous two, but I have a very typical like visual novel example here. So in this example, you're gonna see like the characters is in the background, and they're talking about stuff. And this is a text box here, and usually there will be like some descriptive words appear in the text box just to show like what is going on like under this background image. And sometimes like there will be like characters talking in this text box. And up here there are like two choice boxes appear. So like if you click on one of those, you're gonna link to very different stories. And usually like visual novels is interactive to audiences in a way that you can choose like where the story goes. It like really depends on your personal like feelings of the stories. So like up here, like you can see like there are two very different or like you can see like here are two like very different choices that you can choose. So how my project is made, it is made in a visual novel engine because I feel like if I'm using like some heavy game engines like Unreal or Unity, the process would be like really heavy, and actually like I don't need that much interactions or that much like programming process in my project. And I want it mainly to focus on like images and sounds. So I have an example here. So like if there is a image of the sky and there is sound of walking happening, and there is even an effect of like the screen shaking vertically, it means like the character is moving himself, like, and he is like walking, because like you can link everything together and imagine like he is like actually walking. And this is a screenshot from my project. So you can see like the background is a hospital room, and there's no text box here appear with any descriptive words like the visual novels, but I have a button right on the chair where it says like sit. So you're gonna like click on the button and you'll get a blank screen, and you are gonna hear sound of like moving chairs and sit on chairs, and you're gonna like link everything together. So like the audiences would know like you go to the chair and you just sit down and you are ready to go to the next screen. So this is another example. So this is a metro station, and there's no descriptive words to say like this is a metro station and what is going on here, but you get this button to say like get into the metro. And if you click on this, you're gonna like you're gonna like have a blank screen with sound like people talking and sound of like metro coming. And you are gonna know like you actually go to the metro station and ready for the next things to happen. And in order to tell stories without any like descriptive words, like what is going on or like who is talking, stuff like that, I use a lot of symbolisms. So this one is the ones I use most. Pure black screen equals sound plus sound effects equals transitions. So like because in like our lives, we're gonna hear what is going on and we're gonna understand like what is going on. So for example, like if you sit in the room and you're focused on your laptop, but there is sound of like cars pulling over out of your window, you're gonna know like, okay, somebody is coming in this house. So this is the technique I want to use. So another symbolism I use is like the shake off screen. So like I talked before, like if the screen is shaked vertically, it means like the character is walking. But if it is shake like horizontally, it means it is getting shocked. I got this idea from like Japanese mangas. So you see here, this is the text box they're gonna use when the characters is feeling shocked, and this is the feeling that the character is going shocked. So if the screen is shaked horizontally, it happens like really quick, and it happens like all in a sudden, and you are gonna get that mood like immediately. So another symbolism I used is nipples. So because I don't have any like specific characters appear in my story, but sometimes like there are things that requires a lot of characters to appear. That's when I use nipples to represent there are things happening. So like I have like two different examples that I made by myself. So in this one, there's no descriptive words in this picture, but it looks like a church, and the nipples are standing together, and there's even one like laying down, and there is like a different nipple, and you're gonna know like there must be something happening. In this one, this is not like a typical nipple, but there are like there are like different icons here, and there's like a dragon hide behind the grasses, and there's a symbol of a wand. So I feel it might be like pretty easily to feel like this might be a story of adventure of like people killing the dragon, and they are gathering here to find this dragon hiding behind here. So this is a technique that I want to use. It's kind of similar to the montage in film industry. So for the script writing, it is kind of different, but similar to visual novels because I'm using a visual novel engine. But the focus point is really different because in visual novels, it is like you are gonna tell your audience like what is going on next and what is the situation right now, and you're gonna give them the choices of what you can do. But here it is rather like telling them like how you should feel. It is all about like what you should see and what you should follow. So this is one example. So I made this fake text messages. So like you can see here, there are two images, but the words are mainly the same. And you can see like this one and this one, they're like received and sent by two different people. And by seeing this, you're gonna see like, oh, people who send those texts has a name of Aaron, and people who send this text has the name of Officer Leon. And this is one thing I want the audience to observe. The other thing is that by seeing how the sentences is structured or how they tell the things, you can kind of understand like what their personality is. And that's the way I want my audiences to know the characters, even though like they don't have maybe like a visual like expression or the actual figure appear. And this is another example. So like this is a scene of like an office, and there's no like people sitting in any of the chairs, but there's something on the computer screen. And by seeing this, my audience is gonna know like what is going on like in the background of the story. So that's what I want them to like observe from this office. So my last example is a mammal. So the main character of my story is an officer. So from reading the memo here, you can kind of see like how he is dealing with certain events that is happening. And you're also gonna see like his handwriting, and you're gonna kind of imagine like what kind of person he might be. And the other thing that I use this memo is because this memo listed like everything that happened in the story. So this is kind of telling like the audiences like what is going on in the story, while it shows the characteristic of the character. So I kind of want to like bind everything together, so that my players could use their observations to know like what the story is about. So that's all. That's pretty much all.
Thank you, Yanchum. So you're making us work very hard here, which I suppose is part of of your intention. But so you, have you actually made this story? I mean, are we going to see it?
Yeah. I'm still doing some like final adjustments to it, because like some of my audios are like much louder than others. And I'm like, that's why I don't put like any audio examples in my slides. But yes, like I'm gonna like record the gameplay and post it on YouTube and post the link.
Okay, so we should expect that before the end of the semester?
Yeah, like,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So like I said, you're making your audience work very hard. You're implying all sorts of things that, I mean, any story, whatever format it's taking or whatever platform it's on, is going to require the audience to make certain judgments or, read into things. But
yeah,
you're doing it to you're doing it to a much larger extent than is normally the case, right?
Yeah.
So why are you doing that? I mean, I'm not being negative or anything. I'm just curious how you came up with this as a form of storytelling.
Oh, okay. So I took a lesson about how to write visual novels, and I took a lesson about how to make like game storytelling in a 3D world. And I've taken like multiple like film classes, and some of them even make me to read like comics and related or like relevant like stories that created by other authors. And I found out like they all work well with their own fields, but they don't actually like intersect with other fields. Like when you read a visual novel, you will know this is only a visual novel, And even there is pictures in that visual novel, the pictures is still a support of the story itself. The most important thing in a visual novel is your descriptive words, and the most important thing is in comics is the images. And I kind of was curious, like, what if like I could put everything together? And I don't know if this makes sense. So like when you watch a film, there will be like montage happening, and I'm like really curious, like why it only works in the film screen and why it doesn't work in other platforms. So that's why I started to create this project. I want to see like how much, like how far I can go if I put a storytelling way into another platform.
So in other words, it's totally experimental. And it sounds like I can't think of any other example, you know, and not that I would necessarily know, but I can't think of anything like this. So it sounds like a completely new way of telling a story. So two questions. First of all, are you satisfied with the way it's coming out? And that's just for you. And then secondly, you know, like any story, at least anything that's going to go into any sort of production, it's going to depend on audience, you know, your audience liking it. So do you have plans, assuming that you like what you've done, do you have plans to send it out to a broader audience?
So to answer the first one, I'm like half satisfied. So as I said in my script writing, like it is like really different from I used to write a story. Well, I take like creative writing classes, and it's in the process of this one is like really different. So I was planning to tell a more complete or a more complex story, but I wasn't able to do it here because it takes like too much effort to do the same stuff here rather than like telling it with like descriptive words. So I'm like half satisfied with what I have for now. And to answer the second question, I actually like have that plan of putting it in a broader way, but like personally, like I know this is like a really experimental and really narrow stuff. So I don't have the confidence that like most people would feel this is a good way to tell a story. But I'm planning to go to like graduate school after graduate like in 2 weeks, and I'm gonna learn and like I wish like I could learn some techniques that could actually like work well with this type of storytelling, maybe like expand it in like a game storytelling, or maybe expand it in like special like drama storytelling, because I know like there is a drama called Sleep No More, and it is in New York City. And so the way it works is like people just walk into the building, and the actors is gonna like do their actions like in different rooms, and you're gonna like follow the characters rather than like sitting in one spot and seeing like what is going on. So like you're actually like experiencing the story. So that's where I want to go with.
Fascinating. Well, I very much enjoyed your presentation. You didn't need to be nervous. You did a great job. So now, Meg, if you would like to, if you've got any questions to follow up.
Thank you. Yeah, Yanchum, I found this so interesting because it's like one part, it's all the things I guess that I would like about a choose your own adventure book, if you're familiar at all with that. That's much older than you are, but I remember those as a young person, but also what people like about games and the ability to choose And the ability to kind of take in, I watch my son play, 13-year-old son play games, and he is so interested in seeing what's happening all around him and then making decisions of what he's going to do next based on what's happening around him. I think it would be really interesting to think about this as a story/game where other people can participate and then change the outcome of the story.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do at first, but I just found like the script might be like too long, and I wrote in my deliverables that I want the outcome to be like 3 to 5 minutes, but if I actually like putting like multiple endings to my story, it's gonna be like 15 minutes, which is like much longer than I would expect.
No, absolutely. For a 15, 16 week semester, I think that you bit off plenty to try to finish a project like this. I think it's really interesting because you really are asking the participant to use all of their kind of detective sensory, types of experiences to decide the direction of the story or to tell the story. Maybe you want them to go in a certain direction. So I find it really interesting. I hope that you can incorporate it into your graduate work. I think that would be a really interesting direction to go in. And I have also heard of, I've heard of it. I can't actually think of the name. I think it's in New York City, but I also want to say that I feel like maybe it was in Washington, DC or Boston, a museum where basically you are following the storyline, you are following the characters and participating. And I think that sounds like a really interesting experience. And I think that you being able to participate and see something like that would have really a fascinating effect on where you take the story next. So really nice job. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Hearing none, we will close up. Once again, we're 10 minutes over, so that's part of the course too. Thank you all. Fascinating presentations. I really enjoyed the variety and the depth you've taken your studies. And now, as I always close these sessions, I have to remind you that whether or not you have a story or a composition to give us, you also have to give us 2 papers, and we will look for those in the next couple of weeks. And then it sounds like most of you will be graduating in 2 weeks. So congratulations on getting this far in your education. But RAT, we say we promote the idea of lifelong learning. So you're not done yet. So, and that's all from me for now.
Fantastic job, all 3 of you, and good luck, congratulations, stay safe, and please do stay in touch and keep us posted on what you do next.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, thank you.